Candide by Voltaire. Chapter 25. The Visit to Lord Pococurante, a Noble Venetian. Candide and Martin went in a gondola on the Brenta, and arrived at the palace of the noble Signor Pococurante. The gardens, laid out with taste, were adorned with fine marble statues. The palace was beautifully built. The master of the house was a man of 60, and very rich. He received the two travelers with polite indifference, which put Candide a little out of countenance, but was not at all disagreeable to Martin. First, two pretty girls, very neatly dressed, served them with chocolate, which was frothed exceedingly well. Candide could not refrain from commending their beauty, grace, and address. "They are good enough creatures," said the senator. "I make them lie with me sometimes, for I am very tired of the ladies of the town, of their coquetries, of their jealousies, of their quarrels, of their humors, of their pettinesses, of their prides, of their follies, and of the sonnets which one must make, or have made, for them. But after all, these two girls begin to weary me." After breakfast, Candide, walking into a long gallery, was surprised by the beautiful pictures. He asked by what master were the two first. "They are by Raphael," said the senator. "I bought them at a great price, out of vanity, some years ago. They are said to be the finest things in Italy, but they do not please me at all. The colors are too dark, the figures are not sufficiently rounded, nor in good relief. The draperies in no way resemble stuffs. In a word, whatever may be said, I do not find there a true imitation of nature. I only care for a picture when I think I see nature itself, and there are none of this sort. I have a great many pictures, but I prize them very little." While they were waiting for dinner, Pococurante ordered a concert. Candide found the music delicious. "This noise," said the senator, "may amuse one for half an hour, but if it were to last longer it would grow tiresome to everybody," though they durst not own it. "Music today is only the art of executing difficult things, and that which is only difficult cannot please long. Perhaps I should be fonder of the opera if they had not found the secret of making of it a monster which shocks me. Let who will go to see bad tragedy set to music, where the scenes are contrived for no other end than to introduce 2 or 3 songs, ridiculously out of place, to show off an actress's voice. Let who will, or who can, die away with pleasure at the sight of a eunuch quavering the rule of Caesar or of Cato, and strutting awkwardly upon the stage. For my part, I have long since renounced those paltry entertainments which constitute the glory of modern Italy, and are purchased so dearly by sovereigns." Candide disputed the point a little, but with discretion. Martin was entirely of the senator's opinion. They sat down to table, and after an excellent dinner they went into the library. Candide, seeing a Homer magnificently bound, commended the virtuoso on his good taste. "There," said he, "is a book that was once the delight of the great Pangloss, the best philosopher in Germany." "It is not mine," answered Pococurante coolly. "They used at one time to make me believe that I took a pleasure in reading him. But what continual repetition of battles so extremely like one another, those gods that are always active without doing anything decisive, that Helen who is the cause of the war, and who yet scarcely appears in the piece, that Troy so long besieged without being taken, all these together caused me great weariness. I have sometimes asked learned men whether they were not as weary as I of that work. Those who were sincere have owned to me that the poem made them fall asleep. Yet it was necessary to have it in their library as a monument of antiquity, or like those rusty medals which are no longer of use in commerce." "But your Excellency does not think thus of Virgil," said Candide. I grant, said the senator, that the 2nd, 4th, and 6th books of his Aeneid are excellent. But as for his pious Aeneas, his strong Cloanthus, his friend Achates, his little Asinius, his silly King Latinus, his bourgeois Amata, his insipid Lavinia, I think there can be nothing more flat and disagreeable. I prefer Tasso a good deal, or even the soporific tales of Ariosto. "May I presume to ask you, sir," said Candide, "whether you do not receive a great deal of pleasure from reading Horace?" "There are maxims in this writer," answered Pococurante, "from which a man of the world may reap great benefit, and being written in energetic verse, they are more easily impressed upon the memory. But I care little for this journey to Brundusium, and his account of a bad dinner, or of his low quarrel between one Rupilius, whose words, he says, were full of poisonous filth, and another whose language was imbued with vinegar. I have read with much distaste his indelicate verses against old women and witches, nor do I see any merit in telling his friend Maecenas that if he will but rank him in the choir of lyric poets, his lofty head shall touch the stars. Fools admire everything in an author of reputation. For my part, I read only to please myself. I like only that which serves my purpose." Candide, having been educated never to judge for himself, was much surprised at what he heard. Martin found there was a good deal of reason in Pococurante's remarks. "Oh, here is Cicero," said Candide. "Here is the great man whom I fancy you are never tired of reading." "I never read him," replied the Venetian. "What is it to me whether he pleads for Rabirius or Cluentius? I try causes enough myself. His philosophical works seemed to me better, but when I found that he doubted of everything, I concluded that I knew as much as he, and that I had no need of a guide to learn ignorance." "Ha! Here are 80 volumes of the Academy of Sciences," cried Martin. "Perhaps there is something valuable in this collection." "There might be," said Pococurante, "if only one of those rakers of rubbish had shown how to make pins. But in all these volumes there is nothing but chimerical systems, and not a single useful thing." "And what dramatic works I see here," said Candide, "in Italian, Spanish, and French." "Yes," replied the senator, "there are 3,000, and not 36 of them good for anything. As to those collections of sermons, which altogether are not worth a single page of Seneca, and those huge volumes of theology, you may well imagine that neither I nor anyone else ever opens them." Martin saw some shelves filled with English books. "I have a notion," said he, "that a republican must be greatly pleased with most of these books, which are written with a spirit of freedom." "Yes," answered Pococurante, "it is noble to write as one thinks. This is the privilege of humanity. In all our Italy we write only what we do not think. Those who inhabit the country of the Caesars and the Antoninuses dare not acquire a single idea without the permission of a Dominican friar. I should be pleased with the liberty which inspires the English genius, if passion and party spirit did not corrupt all that is estimable in this precious liberty." Candide, observing a Milton, asked whether he did not look upon this author as a great man. "Who?" said Pococurante. "That barbarian who writes a long commentary in 10 books of harsh verse on the first chapter of Genesis? That coarse imitator of the Greeks, who disfigures the creation, and who, while Moses represents the eternal, producing the world by a word, makes the Messiah take a great pair of compasses from the armory of heaven to circumscribe his work. How can I have any esteem for a writer who has spoiled Tasso's hell and the devil, who transforms Lucifer sometimes into a toad and other times into a pygmy, who makes him repeat the same things 100 times, who makes him dispute on theology, who, by a serious imitation of Ariosto's comic invention of firearms, represents the devil's cannonading in heaven? Neither I nor any man in Italy could take pleasure in those melancholy extravagances. And the marriage of sin and death, and the snakes brought forth by sin, are enough to turn the stomach of any one with the least taste. And his long description of a pest house is good only for a grave digger. This obscure, whimsical, and disagreeable poem was despised upon its first publication, and I only treat it now as it was treated in its own country by contemporaries. For the matter of that, I say what I think, and I care very little whether others think as I do." Candide was grieved at this speech, for he had a respect for Homer, and was fond of Milton. "Alas," said he softly to Martin, "I am afraid that this man holds our German poets in very great contempt."
"There would not be much harm in that," said Martin.
"Oh, what a superior man!" said Candide below his breath. "What a great genius is this Pococurante! Nothing can please him." After their survey of the library, they went down into the garden, where Candide praised its several beauties. "I know of nothing in so bad a taste," said the master. "All you see here is merely trifling. After tomorrow I will have it planted with a nobler design." "Well," said Candide to Martin, when they had taken their leave, "you will agree that this is the happiest of mortals, for he is above everything he possesses."
"But do you not see," answered Martin, "that he is disgusted with all he possesses? Plato observed a long while ago that those stomachs are not the best that reject all sorts of food."
"But is there not a pleasure," said Candide, "in criticizing everything, in pointing out faults where others see nothing but beauties?"
"That is to say," replied Martin, "that there is some pleasure in having no pleasure."
"Well, well," said Candide, "I find that I shall be the only happy man when I am blessed with the sight of my dear Cunegonde."
"It is always well to hope," said Martin.
However, the days and the weeks passed. Cacambo did not come, and Candide was so overwhelmed with grief that he did not even reflect that Paquette and Friar Giroflee did not return to thank him. Chapter 25. Chapter 26. Of a supper which Candide and Martin took with 6 strangers, and who they were. One evening that Candide and Martin were going to sit down to supper with some foreigners who lodged in the same inn, a man whose complexion was as black as soot came behind Candide, and taking him by the arm, said, "Get yourself ready to go along with us. Do not fail." Upon this he turned round and saw Cacambo. Nothing but the sight of Cunegonde could have astonished and delighted him more. He was on the point of going mad with joy. He embraced his dear friend. "Cunegonde is here, without doubt. Where is she? Take me to her, that I may die of joy in her company." "Cunegonde is not here," said Cacambo. "She is at Constantinople." "Oh, heavens, at Constantinople! But were she in China, I would fly thither. Let us be off." "We shall set out after supper," replied Cacambo. "I can tell you nothing more. I am a slave. My master awaits me. I must serve him at table. Speak not a word. Eat, and then get ready." Candide, distracted between joy and grief, delighted at seeing his faithful agent again, astonished at finding him a slave, filled with the fresh hope of recovering his mistress, his heart palpitating, his understanding confused, sat down to table with Martin, who saw all these scenes quite unconcerned, and with 6 strangers who had come to spend the carnival at Venice. Cacambo waited at table upon one of the strangers. Towards the end of the entertainment he drew near his master and whispered in his ear, "Sire, your majesty may start when you please. The vessel is ready." On saying these words he went out. The company, in great surprise, looked at one another without speaking a word, when another domestic approached his master and said to him, "Sire, your majesty's chaise is at Padua, and the boat is ready." The master gave a nod, and the servant went away. The company all stared at one another again, and their surprise redoubled. A third valet came up to a third stranger, saying, "Sire, believe me, your majesty ought not to stay here any longer. I am going to get everything ready." And immediately he disappeared. Candide and Martin did not doubt that this was a masquerade of the carnival. Then a fourth domestic said to a fourth master, "Your majesty may depart when you please." Saying this, he went away like the rest. The fifth valet said the same thing to the fifth master. But the sixth valet spoke differently to the sixth stranger, who sat near Candide. He said to him, "Faith, sire, they will no longer give credit to your majesty nor to me, and we may perhaps both of us be put in jail this very night. Therefore I will take care of myself. Adieu." The servants being all gone, the six strangers with Candide and Martin remained in a profound silence. At length Candide broke in. "Gentlemen," said he, "this is a very good joke indeed, but why should you all be kings? For me, I own that neither Martin nor I is a king." Cacambo's master then gravely answered in Italian, "I am not joking. My name is Achmet III. I was a great sultan many years. I dethroned my brother, my nephew dethroned me, my viziers were beheaded, and I am condemned to end my days in the old seraglio. My nephew, the great Sultan Mahmud, permits me to travel sometimes for my health, and I am come to spend the carnival at Venice." A young man who sat next to Achmet spoke then as follows. "My name is Ivan. I was once emperor of all the Russias, but was dethroned in my cradle. My parents were confined in prison, and I was educated there. Yet I am sometimes allowed to travel in company with persons who act as guards, and I am come to spend the carnival at Venice." The third said,
"I am Charles Edward, King of England. My father has resigned all his legal rights to me. I have fought in defense of them, and above 800 of my adherents have been hanged, drawn, and quartered. I have been confined in prison. I am going to Rome to pay a visit to the king, my father, who was dethroned as well as myself and my grandfather, and I am come to spend carnival at Venice."
The fourth spoke thus in his turn, "I am the king of Poland. The fortune of war has stripped me of my hereditary dominions. My father underwent the same vicissitudes. I resign myself to Providence in the same manner as Sultan Achmet, the Emperor Ivan, and King Charles Edward, whom God long preserve, and I am come to the carnival at Venice." The fifth said, "I am king of Poland also. I have been twice dethroned, but Providence has given me another country, where I have done more good than all the Sarmatian kings were ever capable of doing on the banks of the Vistula. I resign myself likewise to Providence, and am come to pass the carnival at Venice." It was now the sixth monarch's turn to speak. "Gentlemen," said he, "I am not so great a prince as any of you. However, I am a king. I am Theodore, elected king of Corsica. I had the title of Majesty, and now I am scarcely treated as a gentleman. I have coined money, and now I am not worth a farthing. I have had 2 secretaries of state, and now I have scarce a valet. I have seen myself on a throne, and I have seen myself upon straw in a common jail in London. I am afraid that I shall meet with the same treatment here, though, like your majesties, I am come to see the carnival at Venice." The other 5 kings listened to this speech with generous compassion. Each of them gave 20 sequins to King Theodore, to buy him clothes and linen. and Candide made him a present of a diamond worth 2,000 sequins. "Who can this private person be," said the 5 kings to one another, "who is able to give, and really has given, 100 times as much as any of us?" Just as they rose from the table, in came 4 serene highnesses who had also been stripped of their territories by the fortune of war, and were come to spend the carnival at Venice. But Candide paid no regard to these newcomers. His thoughts were entirely employed on his voyage to Constantinople in search of his beloved Cunegonde. End chapter 26. Chapter 27. Candide's Voyage to Constantinople. The faithful Cacambo had already prevailed upon the Turkish skipper, who was to conduct the Sultan Achmet to Constantinople, to receive Candide and Martin on his ship. They both embarked after having made their obeisance to his miserable highness. "You see," said Candide to Martin on the way, "we supped with 6 dethroned kings, and of those 6 there was one to whom I gave charity. Perhaps there are many other princes yet more unfortunate. For my part, I have only lost 100 sheep, and now I am flying into Cunegonde's arms. My dear Martin, yet once more, Pangloss was right. All is for the best." "I wish it," answered Martin. "But," said Candide, "it was a very strange adventure we met with at Venice. It has never before been seen or heard that 6 dethroned kings have supped together at a public inn." "It is not more extraordinary," said Martin, "than most of the things that have happened to us. It is a very common thing for kings to be dethroned, and as for the honor we have had of supping in their company, it is a trifle not worth our attention." No sooner had Candide got on board the vessel than he flew to his old valet and friend Cacambo, and tenderly embraced him. "Well," said he, "what news of Cunegonde? Is she still a prodigy of beauty? Does she love me still? How is she? Thou hast doubtless bought her a palace at Constantinople." "My dear master," answered Cacambo, "Cunegonde washes dishes on the banks of the Propontis in the service of a prince who has very few dishes to wash. She is a slave in the family of an ancient sovereign named Ragotsky, to whom the Grand Turk allows 3 crowns a day in his exile. But what is worse still is that she has lost her beauty and has become horribly ugly." "Well, handsome or ugly," replied Candide, "I am a man of honor, and it is my duty to love her still. But how came she to be reduced to so abject a state with the 5 or 6 millions that you took to her?" "Ah," said Cacambo, "was I not to give 2 millions to Signor Don Fernando de Ibarra y Figueroa y Mascarenes y Lampourdos y Sousa, governor of Buenos Aires, for permitting Miss Cunegonde to come away? And did not a corsair bravely rob us of all the rest? Did not this corsair carry us to Cape Matapan, to Milo, to Nicaria, to Samos, to Petra, to the Dardanelles, to Marmora, to Scutari? Cunegonde and the old woman serve the prince I now mention to you, and I am slave to the dethroned Sultan." "What a series of shocking calamities!" cried Candide. "But after all, I have some diamonds left, and I may easily pay Cunegonde's ransom. Yet it is a pity that she is grown so ugly." Then, turning towards Martin, "Who do you think," said he, "is most to be pitied, the Sultan Achmet, the Emperor Ivan, King Charles Edward, or I?"
"How should I know?" answered Martin. "I must see into your hearts to be able to tell."
"Ah," said Candide, "if Pangloss were here, he could tell."
"I know not," said Martin, "in what sort of scales your Pangloss would weigh the misfortunes of mankind, and set a just estimate on their sorrows. All that I can presume to say is, that there are millions of people upon earth who have 100 times more to complain of than King Charles Edward, the Emperor Ivan, or the Sultan Achmet."
"That may well be," said Candide. In a few days they reached the Bosphorus, and Candide began by paying a very high ransom for Cacambo. Then, without losing time, he and his companions went on board a galley in order to search on the banks of the Propontis for his Cunegonde, however ugly she might have become. Among the crew there were 2 slaves who rowed very badly, and to whose bare shoulders the Levantine captain would now and then apply blows from a bull's pizzle. Candide, from a natural impulse, looked at these 2 slaves more attentively than at the other oarsmen, and approached them with pity. Their features, though greatly disfigured, had a slight resemblance to those of Pangloss and the unhappy Jesuit and Westphalian baron, brother to Miss Cunegonde. This moved and saddened him. He looked at them still more attentively. "Indeed," said he to Cacambo, "if I had not seen Master Pangloss hanged, and if I had not had the misfortune to kill the baron, I should think it was they that were rowing." At the names of the baron and of Pangloss, the 2 galley slaves uttered a loud cry, held fast by the seat, and let drop their oars. The captain ran up to them and redoubled his blows with the bull's pizzle. "Stop, stop, sir!" cried Candide. "I will give you what money you please."
"What? It is Candide!" said one of the slaves. "What? It is Candide!" said the other.
"Do I dream?" cried Candide, "or am I awake? Or am I on board a galley? Is this the baron whom I killed? Is this Master Pangloss whom I saw hanged?" "It is we," answered they.
"Well, is this the great philosopher?" said Martin.
"Ah, Captain," said Candide, "what ransom will you take for Monsieur de Thunder-Tin-Tronckh, one of the first barons of the empire, and for Monsieur Pangloss, the profoundest metaphysician in Germany?"
"Dog of a Christian," answered the Levantine captain, "since these 2 dogs of Christian slaves are barons and metaphysicians, which I doubt not are high dignities in their country, you shall give me 50,000 sequins."
"You shall have them, sir. Carry me back at once to Constantinople, and you shall receive the money directly. But no, carry me first to Miss Cunegonde."
Upon the first proposal made by Candide, however, the Levantine captain had already tacked about, and made the crew ply their oars quicker than a bird cleaves the air.
Candide embraced the baron and Pangloss 100 times. "And how happened it, my dear baron, that I did not kill you? And, my dear Pangloss, how came you to life again after being hanged? And why are you both in a Turkish galley?"
"And it is true that my dear sister is in this country?" said the baron.
"Yes," answered Cacambo.
"Then I behold once more my dear Candide!" cried Pangloss.
Candide presented Martin and Cacambo to them. They embraced each other, and all spoke at once. The galley flew. They were already in the port. Instantly Candide sent for a Jew, to whom he sold for 50,000 sequins a diamond worth 100,000, though the fellow swore to him by Abraham that he could give him no more. He immediately paid the ransom for the baron and Pangloss. The latter threw himself at the feet of his deliverer, and bathed them with his tears. The former thanked him with a nod, and promised to return him the money on the first opportunity.
"But it is indeed possible that my sister can be in Turkey," said he.
"Nothing is more possible," said Cacambo, "since she scours the dishes in the service of a Transylvanian prince." Candide sent directly for 2 Jews, and sold them some more diamonds, and then they all set out together in another galley to deliver Cunegonde from slavery. End chapter 27.